Hello, this is Yogeshwar 7000 again, and I'm back on my series on stories from the Puranas. And today we'll be talking about a very interesting story coming directly from the Puranas. And by the way, I always keep reminding my viewers that all the stories which I discuss in Stories from the Puranas, all my videos are a direct reference to the ancient scriptures. These stories from the Puranas are coming directly from the Puranas. It's not out of something which was published either on paper or on the internet. So I will request you to have firm faith and belief in it. So this story is about the prince Janamejaya, who was the son of King Parikshit. And King Parikshit, as we know, that he got bit by the snake Takshak. And the reason why he got bit by the snake Takshak has been discussed in my earlier video, so I will request you to please refer to that video about how King Parikshit loses his life. King Parikshit was the son of Abhimanyu, and Abhimanyu was the son of Arjuna, the great Arjuna, the Mahabharata character. And this story is about King Parikshit, who was bit by the great snake Takshak's son, Janamejaya. So when King Parikshit was bit by the snake Takshak, his son was a mere boy. Janamejaya was a mere boy, and all the funeral ceremonies were performed by the ministers. So they burned the king on the banks of the Ganges. They burned King Parikshit on the banks of the Ganges, and they did not utter any mantra because his death was due to the snake bite. And then they placed the king and put the body in the funeral pyre and burnt it with sandalwood. And then the priests performed all the funeral ceremonies and gave some amount of gold and things to the Brahmins and the clothings to the Brahmins, so the king can attain heaven. But as per the Hindu beliefs, unless a person dies of natural cause, or in this case he was a king, King Parikshit was a warrior, unless he dies either by natural causes or in a battlefield, there is no guarantee that he would attain heavens. This was an accidental death or a death by a snake bite, which was very unusual. So everybody was a little concerned as to whether King Parikshit would attain heavenhood or not. But anyways, when the boy prince Janamejaya grew up, he was installed as the new king, and he was given instructions about what duties he should be performed. As a matter of fact, he was crowned as soon as King Parikshit died, but he was growing up. He was about 11 years of age at that time. But then he gradually grew up, and with the help of his ministers, he could govern his kingdom. When Janamejaya was a little older, the family priest initiated him with the Gayatri mantra. That was the tradition, that was the Hindu tradition of that time. And then Kripacharya was the Acharya or the Guru, who was actually the Guru of the Pandavas and the Kauravas as well. And he taught the prince Janamejaya with the science of the bow and the arrow, how to shoot arrows. Just like Dronacharya had taught Arjuna, his grandfather's father. And it would be surprising to know that Kripacharya was still alive, although he was a Mahabharata character. So this was like 3 generations later. He was still alive. And that time, because of yogic practices, munis and rishis and highly enlightened people could stay alive for a very, very long period of time. So Janamejaya learned all the sciences of warfare by Kripacharya, and he became extremely powerful to his enemies because he got skilled in the science of archery. Also, he learned the branches of the Vedas, so he had the knowledge of the ancient scriptures, spiritual scriptures, the Dharma Shastras as it's called in Sanskrit, and also the science of archery, which made him very powerful, and also Arthashastra, which is a Sanskrit name for economics, so that he could govern his kingdom with a lot of expertise. So when he grew up finally, and he was in his youth, prime of his youth, the king of Kashi is the present-day Banaras or Varanasi in India. So the king of Kashi gave his daughter Vapustama in marriage to him, to the prince Janamejaya. And the king Janamejaya, with his beautiful wife Vapustama, they started to enjoy their marital life. They went to the forest and the gardens, and they started to enjoy their marital life. So while he was governing the kingdom, he was also married, and then he started to enjoy his life with the king of Kashi's daughter, Vapustama, who was given in marriage to him. But in the meanwhile, there was a Muni, a Rishi, a sage. His name was Utanka. He was very much troubled by Takshaka, the same snake who had bit King Parikshit, his father. He was very troubled by Takshaka, the snake. And he wanted to take revenge on Takshak. Although he was a Muni, a Rishi, a sage, but he wanted to take revenge on the snake Takshak. Takshak is considered to be a very powerful snake, and he was the one, once again, to remind you, that who bit the father of the new king Janamejaya, Parikshit was the father of Janamejaya. I keep repeating this because these Sanskrit names are a little difficult, so I just want to reiterate my point again so that you do not forget and do not get confused. So King Parikshit's son was Janamejaya, who was crowned king and now married, and Parikshit was bit by the snake Takshaka, who was a very powerful snake, who was also troubling another rishi, another sage called Utanka, and he wanted to take revenge on Takshaka. So when he found the right opportunity, when the Muni Utanka found the right opportunity, he came to Hastinapur, where King Janamejaya was ruling and enjoying his marital life, and he spoke to the king. He told him that, look, king, you do not know a thing what is to be done. What you're doing right now is not to be done right now. There is no energy in you. There is no anger in you. You're doing things just like a child does. You do not understand the meaning of the Shastras, of the ancient scriptures. Although he did, of course, we know that he was trained in the Vedas and the ancient scriptures, but still, the Muni, the Rishi, Utanka, told him, confronted him, and told him this. So on hearing this, King Janamejaya said, "Oh, highly fortunate one, the great sage, Utanka, why do you say so? I do not know who's my enemy and whom I should be angry with. Please let me know what I have to do," because he always respected the sages, the rishis, the munis. On this, sage Utanka said, "O king, let me tell you, the wicked snake Takshak killed your father. Now, are you aware of this?" So King Janamejaya was actually kind of not aware exactly how his father died, because he was just a boy when his father died. And he asked his ministers that how did my father die, and the ministers told him that your father died out of the snake Takshaka's bite. And then the king said, so the cause of my father's death is the Brahman's curse, because he was told the whole story. And that story has been discussed in my earlier video. I'll recommend, please go and refer to that. So the king said that the cause of my father's death is the Brahman's curse. So what is the fault of Takshaka in this matter? He started to ponder over it. Well, Takshaka the snake bit him because of the Brahman's curse, so he had to do that. So he started to think, what is the fault of the snake Takshaka? And then again sage Utanka said, well, it was the snake Takshaka who gave a lot of wealth to a Brahman, Kashyapa, who was coming to cure your father of Takshaka's poison. And he kind of had the Brahman Kashyapa go back because of his greed for gold. He gave him a lot of gold and a lot of wealth, and that's the reason why your father could not be saved, because that Brahman Kashyapa had some kind of a magic potion to cure your father Parikshit of Takshaka's poison. So that's the reason why he reasoned, Utanka reasoned with the king. That is the reason why you should consider snake Takshaka as your enemy. And on this, the king understood. He sadly wept. King Janamejaya sadly wept. The son of King Parikshita sadly wept, and he thought within himself that I'm so stupid. I feel myself so proud that I'm a great king, but everything is in vain. I could not even honor my father, who was bitten by a snake and who has gone down to hell, because I'm not even sure if he's in heaven. Now I am going to start a Sarpa Yagya. Sarpa is a Sanskrit word for snake. Yagya or a yajna is a fire ritual. So he wanted to start a snake fire ritual, and he would ensure the destruction of all the snakes in the world in the blazing fire, and thus he would be able to get his father out from hell and to be able to deliver him heavens. That's what was his belief, because he would take his revenge on all the snakes because of the fault of snake Takshaka. Of course, this was not the right way of thinking. That's what he thought, because he got so angry that, King Parikshita, his father, was bitten by the great snake Takshaka, who was the leader of the snakes, actually. So he would take revenge on all the snakes in the world and have a snake fire ritual where he'll burn all the snakes into the fire with the power of the mantras. He would draw all the snakes into the fire and burn them. So that was his promise. He took this kind of a promise that he will do this. So he called on his ministers. He told his ministers, okay, well, let's make arrangements for a great sacrifice, a fire ritual, and let's have a suitable holy site on the banks of the Ganges, the river Ganges. And then let's get all the Brahmins and get them chant those mantras so that we can draw all the snakes in the world into this holy fire, or the ritual which would be performed to kill all the snakes in the world. So it'll be a snake fire ritual where he'll call the Brahmins will chant mantras, and all the snakes in the world are going to be drawn into it and get destroyed. So here, when snake Takshaka came to know about this fire ritual, he got extremely upset, and he became very distressed with fear, and he went to Lord Indra. Indra is the king of all the devas, or the gods, and he asked him, please save my life, Lord Indra. And Indra gave him some kind of a solace, some kind of a hope, and he said, don't worry, I'll take care of it. Do not fear of the great snake fire ritual which is going to happen. So here, when the sage Utanka, who had actually encouraged the king to perform the ritual, when he came to know that the snake Takshak had taken Indra's protection, he was upset as well, because he wanted to take revenge on Takshak. And he went again to the king, and the king said, okay, don't worry, I'm going to still have the ritual, the snake fire ritual, and make sure all the snakes, including Takshaka, are burnt to death. But here, once again, the snake Takshak went to another great sage called Astik, and he asked him for help. And here sage Astik came to the sacrificial hall, and he started to praise King Janamejaya. And King Janamejaya, when he saw Rishi Astik, sage Astik, come to that fire ceremony hall, where on the banks of the river Ganges, where this ritual was being performed, and all the snakes were being drawn into the fire and burnt, he asked Rishi Astik, or the sage Astik, what have you come here for? And he took this as his personal ego. He said, well, okay, I'm going to grant you whatever you asked for, because you praised me here in the sacrificial fire ceremony. You sang hymns in praise of me, so I am going to grant you anything what you asked for. That was the king's ego, that yes, he would grant the Brahmin, the sage, anything what he would ask for. And at that very moment, Rishi Astik, the sage Astik, took that as an opportunity, and he told King Janamejaya, please do not continue with this sacrifice where you're burning all the snakes into this sacrificial fire. And then the king, who had given his promise that he would grant any kind of a wish to the sage Astik, he had no other choice but to stop the ceremony, the religious fire ceremony, the snake ceremony, where he was destroying all the snakes. And he wanted to keep his word. And this way the fire ceremony was stopped, the destruction of the snakes was stopped, and somehow the leftover snakes were somehow saved, including the great sage Takshak. So this was a little story which is coming directly from the Puranas about the fire ceremony, the snake fire ceremony, and how it was stopped because of the cleverness of sage Astik, who went over to the king and somehow convinced him to stop this sacrificial fire which was destroying all the snakes in this world. Hopefully you enjoyed it. In the meanwhile, I will recommend subscribe to my channel, check out my website, and I will continue with my stories from the Puranas in my next session very soon. Goodbye.